Hello, my name is Kriostyx and welcome to Styxperience, a show where I have experienced a game and then I talk about it, giving my opinion on it. And this time I've been playing The Witness, the puzzle game by Jonathan Blow and his team of developers. And this game is extremely difficult to review because it's pretty much almost not up to debate whether or not it's a good puzzle game, because as a puzzle game, it's good and it gives exactly what it promises. A lot of puzzles. And the puzzles being those sort of display things that we'll get to a bit later. The point here is that it can vary in a case-by-case basis per person whether or not you'll have a good time with this. And that depends on how easily you get frustrated and how you handle that frustration, and also how gifted you are in the specific type of puzzle mechanics in this game, and how you have like spatial awareness or so and so. And that is really hard to know in advance because I haven't met a whole lot of puzzles like the ones I've seen in this game. These first ones are simple, and I've seen these, obviously. It's like a labyrinth. You take the line from start to finish, and then it's done, and then it lights up the electrical wire, and you move on to the next display, and so on. Also, don't worry, I'm not gonna spoil a whole bunch of puzzles here. I'll solve a couple in this absolute beginning, and then like one line of tutorials later on. So don't worry about that, I'll just do the absolute minimum I have to get a couple of points across. And I'll also run around the island a little bit so you'll get an idea of what the world or the island sort of looks like. And that's pretty much it. One thing that's sort of jumps to eye pretty quickly about the world here already is that this is a very colorful game, and that's a pretty good thing. I've seen enough of grays and browns and all that sort of stuff, so having clear and bright and vibrant colors is a nice change of pace from the usual stuff. Also, you might have noticed that there is no background music either here. That is choice they made for this one, and it's sort of like, if it bothers you, then it does, and the answer to that is pretty much, well, that's the kind of game they made, that's the artistical choice they wanted to do, and that's what we have to live with. Also, if you're looking for any kind of story or traditional like plot told to you with words or such and so, you will be disappointed, because this game is just about puzzles, 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 and more puzzles. So you should be expecting only that and you'll be golden. And in my case, the experience here was that I was in awe of the world, I was intrigued by the puzzles for quite some time here, and then it gets really, really hard. And I was just stumped and stonewalled every step of the way in pretty much almost every direction after like maybe 80 or 90 or 100 puzzles or something like that. And that's when the frustration set in, and I was just... and then I was having a bad time. But that's the thing. If I would have more patience and maybe more gifts in the brain department to handle those specific sorts of puzzles, that would be a completely different story. But the puzzle types are very different in this game, so there's probably some things that everyone will have problems with. Like, different people have different problems with different sorts of puzzles, that sort of thing. So there is that. Also, thing to mention is that the water and the water physics look and sound kind of nice. Have to mention that was pretty, it's almost the only thing that gives any sound apart from the footsteps in this world, and that gives a little tiny bit of, I wouldn't say life, but let's say immersion into the place. And a common critique toward this game is, indeed, that the world is, while beautiful and pretty to look at, and nice and everything, it is ultimately quite empty. Like there's fields, there's rocks, there's trees, there's pink trees, there's a building or more buildings, there might be a river, the ocean, some more buildings even, or there's even like sand or a mountain or such and so. So there's like stuff, but it's still empty. There's not really anything to interact with here other than the fact that there's puzzles and a whole bunch of them. I've heard like over 500 puzzles, and yeah, that sounds about right. There's a whole lot of them. And again, here's like an example of the water physics here, which sort of, they look kind of soothing. I kind of like that one. But it might be pretty important here to explain why this game got so hard for me. So we're going back to that line of tutorial displays we saw a bit earlier, and the idea is always like before an area or inside an area to have a line of displays as a tutorial to gradually make a bit more difficult puzzles with the same kind of mechanic to teach you what you have to work with and what mechanics you need to utilize in order to solve the puzzles ahead. And when that works, it's really great. It's fun, it's engaging, it's really fun. But when it doesn't, it gets problematic. And when there is no text or no words or no audio to explain these things to you in the game, you're kind of stumped. You're stonewalled, and you almost then either have to just sleep on it, or, as most people would, and I did as well, look up a guide. But let's start here and see what we have to work with. So there's a black one and a white one, there's dots, and my first assumption is, okay, maybe they form a gate, and I go through them, and that solves it. Great, okay. So this is almost the same thing, so I'm assuming again, like, so the gate, again, go between them, and that's that, right? Yes, it is indeed. And here we do this, and I'm thinking again, like, okay, so the gate idea again, go between those and then go to the end, maybe? Yeah. And now I see this, and I start thinking like, I don't know if the gate idea works here, but maybe I need to just, I don't know, like isolate the white one, or something from the black ones, and then go to the end? And yeah, it is indeed that. And this looks like it utilizes the same kind of idea, like isolate the white stuff, right? And then reach the end toward, like, from the right side up. That's my thinking, at least. And it works. Yes, it does. And here we have almost the same thing, but the end is in a different spot. But the idea still looks sound. Like, just isolate the white ones and go to the end. Great, awesome. And this got a bit more tricky now. Because I'm looking like, well, I can't put the white ones into the same cube, sort of technically at least, if I'm assuming the edges of the grid are also walls, right? So that won't work, so I need to think of something else. And, well, okay, so now I take a leap of logic like, well, maybe I need to separate the whites from the blacks, but not exactly having to put them to the same place. And there, that worked. And here we have roughly the same idea again. We have the whites and the blacks in places where we can't put them into the exact same area with the white ones. Like, that won't work because that white dot is not separated from the black dots. So we need to do it this way. And again, seeing that all the white ones don't need to be in the same exact box, sort of. And here we get a bit more tricky with it, because the exit is right next to the white one, so how does this work then? Well, I think about it, I wonder a bit, and there we go. Here we also get the white ones into the same box again, but apparently it's not important to get into the same box just to separate them. But here's the thing. During this tutorial, we evolved from thinking it's a gate to thinking it's separate the whites into a box, and then we evolved further on to thinking, oh, it's supposed to be about just separating the two colors from each other, but not necessarily putting all the one color into the one same box or boxed off area. So that's a couple of leaps of logic in the tutorial. And that is a good and pretty easy tutorial to have those things. But here's the thing. When you reach a tutorial where you solve the puzzle, but you didn't pick up on one of the rules of the puzzle and you didn't fully understand why you solved it, then you're fucked. Because you won't be able to solve the next one or something later on, and then you just get left in the dust with the logic and you're just gone. You will not be able to get it, and that happened to me quite a few times during this game. This one is an easy line of tutorials, but there is some pretty hard stuff later on. And also, there is indeed at least one puzzle type, in my opinion, that was not tutorialized at all, and I had to look up, like, what the hell does this symbol mean, and what does it need me to do? And further on, there's at least was one crucial puzzle to me going forward in the actual game that I had to solve, but that particular mechanic in that one puzzle was not in the tutorials that I had just before solved. I then just utilized the things I learned, and it actually solved the puzzle, but I couldn't go forward because I didn't do it the right way or something. And then you need to look up a guide, and then that's that. But also, when you look up a guide, or if you do, you need to understand one thing. You are not making the choice of skipping just that one puzzle, or at least the experience of solving that one puzzle. You are making the choice for every single puzzle of that type. Because when you use the guide to solve puzzle A without actually learning that puzzle, then the next one will be harder of the same type, and you won't have the ability in your brain equipped to handle that one either, or the next one, or the next one, or the next one, and so on. So basically you will almost certainly need the guide for every puzzle of that one area, and maybe even some of them further on. Of course, if you have to use a guide to go forward, then you have to. That's life, and it doesn't make you dumb, it just means that, well, everyone has different strengths and weaknesses with their problem-solving skills, and that stuff will surface in this game. So that's that. But with all of that said, the recommendation I can give here is kind of positive but cautious, because again, case-by-case basis, right? If you are a seasoned puzzle veteran who is confident in your ability to handle frustration, to do these kinds of puzzles, and to have a lot of patience, you will be golden and go buy and get this game. But if you are not exactly confident in your ability to handle the constant stonewallings, the moments of being stuck in one single puzzle for days and days and days on end, and probably having to use a guide to at least some of them, then it gets a bit more tricky, because then it's really hard to say for sure whether or not you like that game then. But I would still recommend at least like getting it from a cheap sale or something, because even in my case, where I was quite often really frustrated, raging on because I was just getting so stumped in quite a few places, I still had a lot of fun. Because when you do solve stuff, it feels super good, and when you realize something really cool, it feels super good too. And that is really like the moments of revelation in this game are one of the most fun feelings I've had all year. So there is that. And if the game would be easier, then obviously the feeling wouldn't be quite as strong. So it's sort of a double-edged thing. It's a hard game, but then again, I guess it's sort of supposed to be. And with that, I'm all done. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.